It wasn't until my golden retriever, Apollo, started coughing up this thick, almost rainbow-sheen black sludge that I realized something in my world, my perfectly constructed, self-sufficient world, had just gone irrevocably dark. My first thought, and I swear this is true, was maybe he ate something crazy in the woods, or maybe it was just a massive, disgusting algae bloom because we'd been hitting 80 degrees all week. But when I finally got the wrench, climbed up the back of the house, and unscrewed the inspection port on the main 50-foot cistern, the smell that hit me wasn't rotten leaves or stagnant water. It was that gut-wrenching, metallic, terrifying stench of burnt, spent motor oil. My entire pride and joy, my meticulously maintained, off-grid rainwater harvesting system, was swimming in a pool of viscous, toxic goo. And before I could even fully breathe through the nausea, I scrambled to the one place I knew the truth lay hidden, the security footage archive. I scrubbed the timeline, past the postman and the morning joggers, and then she appeared. Eleanor Vance, the undisputed, terrifyingly beige queen of the Oakhaven Estates Homeowners Association, whom we all quietly, bitterly called Ellie the Enforcer, sneaking into my yard, hauling 2 massive, 5-gallon jugs with this strange, determined little huff that was almost comical if it wasn't so horrifying. She walked straight to the lid of my collection barrel, popped it open, gave a quick, furtive look around the empty street, and then, with zero hesitation, dumped every last drop of that oily filth right into the water we drink. The audacity of it. But the worst part? As she walked away, as if she hadn't just poisoned my dog and my entire household supply, she paused, glanced right up at my hidden camera, gave the most wicked, self-satisfied smirk you can imagine, and flipped the whole system off with her middle finger. That was the exact, electric moment the switch flipped inside me. I realized this wasn't just another petty HOA fine over my native landscaping. This wasn't a prank. This was malice. This was calculated criminal destruction. And I swore right there, staring at that arrogant smirk, that I would not, under any circumstances, let Ellie the Enforcer get away with this. My name is Marcus Reed, and I live in what's supposed to be a nice, quiet corner of the suburbs, a place cursed with one of the most aggressively conformist homeowners associations in the state. I built this rainwater system myself. Underground tanks, solar-powered multi-stage filtration, custom piping that feeds the house and reroutes overflow to the drought-resistant garden. It's my entire independence project. Apollo drinks from it. My entire vegetable patch relies on it. Hell, during the last drought, neighbors, the decent ones, came by with buckets, knowing my system was reliable. Everyone respected it. Everyone except Ellie. Ellie Vance, the HOA president, has always had a problem with me. To be fair, she has a problem with anyone who dares defy her vision of white trim, trimmed hedges, and zero personality. She once slapped a massive fine on a neighbor for hanging a bird feeder because the seeds interfered with the aesthetic continuity of the sidewalk concrete. Another time, she demanded a young couple remove the tiny, tasteful statue of St. Francis from their garden because it wasn't consistent with the community's approved outdoor ornamentation palette. But my ultimate sin? I had rain barrels and solar panels. I had the nerve to try and live sustainably and independently in her tightly controlled kingdom of uniformity. And now, she was ensuring I paid the ultimate price. I stood in my yard, the footage looping that hideous, triumphant smirk. It was beyond simple vandalism. She had deliberately introduced a known toxic material into a private drinking source. That's environmental sabotage. That's a felony. And the deeper I thought about the depth of her vindictiveness, the angrier, and paradoxically, the calmer I became. This wasn't just a squabble over lawn height anymore. This was a criminal act. But instead of picking up the phone and screaming at her, or rushing over to confront her with my fists, I did the only thing that made sense to me. I smiled. Because what Ellie the Enforcer didn't know, what she could never have understood, is that I'm not just some backyard hobbyist with a green thumb and some big tanks. I am a certified environmental quality systems engineer with a decade of experience in industrial contamination response and 5 years working directly with the state's Department of Environmental Protection, the DEP, on water safety and remediation projects. I don't just build these systems. I design them to withstand failure, and more importantly, I document everything with the precision of a prosecutor. I immediately got to work. I carefully siphoned off the top layers of the toxic sludge, collected multiple samples into sterilized, lab-grade containers, sealed them, labeled them meticulously, and stored them in a temperature-controlled lockbox. I knew precisely what protocols to follow. Testing for specific hydrocarbon chains, metallic residues like zinc and lead, and synthetic marker additives that could not only pinpoint the oil's type, but potentially the exact brand. But before jumping into the lab work, I had to expand the perimeter. Was Ellie just targeting me, or was this a wider toxic crusade? I started asking around, subtly posing as a guy doing a neighborhood water quality survey. And the stories came pouring in. Turns out, I wasn't the only one. My neighbor, Mrs. Petrov, a sweet old lady who grew prize-winning roses, said her small ornamental fountain had started leaking this thick, oily film that killed all her prize fish overnight. 2 houses down, Mr. Chang, the retired accountant, said his little decorative rainwater barrel started smelling like a mechanic's garage and his pet turtles got sick. Something deep down told me Ellie hadn't just poured oil in my tank. She had declared war on all non-HOA-approved water collection. At the next HOA meeting, Ellie showed up in her pristine, tailored suit, handing out bulletins on acceptable mailbox fonts and shooting me a look that was pure, cold loathing, as if I were the one disrupting her perfect suburban bliss. I didn't say a word. Not yet. I wanted to gather more data. Where did she get the oil? Did she have an accomplice? And most importantly, could I link the contamination to the nearby Cedar Creek tributary that fed into the State Forest Preserve? Because here was the high-stakes moment. That creek, which runs along the south side of our neighborhood and catches all the overflow, connects directly to a federally protected wetland zone just 3 miles away. If that sludge had migrated down there, as my environmental training told me it likely had, then we weren't talking about vandalism anymore. We were talking about a federal environmental crime. Ellie the enforcer was suddenly staring down the barrel of the DEP and the FBI. The next morning, I was fully operational. I installed 2 new high-def hidden cameras, upgraded my motion sensors, and spent hours reviewing my old permit files. I meticulously calculated the exact volume of water she had poisoned. I traced the outflow piping, took official samples from the drainage ditch near her property line, and found telltale black streaks along the curb where a slow leak had trickled down. Every single data point confirmed my suspicion. Ellie was not just a vindictive neighborhood bully. She was systematic in her spite. And just when I thought I couldn't be more disgusted, I made a stop at the largest local automotive supply shop, the Pit Stop, to ask a casual question about their bulk used oil program. Turns out, a woman matching Ellie's precise description had bought 2 5-gallon containers of a very specific type of bulk synthetic motor oil 3 days before the incident, paying cash. The clerk, a young guy named Kevin, actually laughed. She looked totally lost, he said, like she thought a wrench was a fancy cocktail mixer. I asked about surveillance cameras. He said yes. I asked if I could get a timestamp. He just raised an eyebrow and asked, "Are you with the DEP or something?" I just smiled and said, "Something like that." By the end of the week, I had it all. Sealed lab samples, chemical residue reports, high-definition video footage, timestamped receipts, witness statements, and a detailed map of the contamination spread. I had a folder so thick it looked like I was building a case against an organized crime syndicate, which, in a way, I was. Ellie thought dumping oil into my tank was just a passive-aggressive way to protest my ugly barrels. She thought no one would notice or care. But she didn't know I built those systems from nothing. She didn't know I worked with the government. And she certainly didn't know I'd make it my mission to ensure she faced the full, uncompromising penalty of environmental law. So, when I finally picked up the phone and called my old boss at the DEP, a gruff but brilliant man named David Stone, I didn't hesitate. I just said, "David, remember that standard protocol you drilled into us? The one about zero tolerance for unauthorized hazardous material dumping into public tributaries." He said, "Yeah, Marcus. Why? You find some idiot throwing tires in the river." I said, "Worse. I've got a case for you. And you're going to want to bring a full contamination response team and maybe a camera crew." David didn't even wait for me to finish describing the level of malice. The moment I mentioned bulk synthetic motor oil and the close proximity of the federally protected Cedar Creek, he cut me off. "We'll have an official field investigation unit there by Friday. Secure the evidence. Don't touch anything else." That gave me 3 days to confirm the last few details, because as good as my evidence felt, I wanted certainty. Ellie wasn't getting a slap on the wrist. I was aiming for felony charges, the kind that stick like crude oil on beach sand. Ellie, meanwhile, was completely oblivious, doubling down on her facade of suburban perfection. She paraded around the neighborhood in her crisp white clothes, passing out passive-aggressive bulletins about protecting property values and avoiding unsightly clutter. Her new favorite buzzword was architectural integrity. She used it to shame a homeowner for installing an energy-efficient screen door. I was actually in the middle of cleaning out my filters when she posted a flyer warning residents about the potential public health hazard posed by unauthorized water collection breeding mosquitoes. The hypocrisy was staggering. The best part? She had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead, and that an official environmental investigation was about to land squarely on her HOA office like a tactical strike. As my final prep, I completed the full chemical analysis on the contaminated tank water. The results were exactly what I expected. Off-the-charts concentrations of various hydrocarbons, heavy zinc markers, and a synthetic additive compound unique to the bulk oil she had purchased at the pit stop. I took the lab results, the time-stamped receipt I'd secured from Kevin, and overlaid them with my surveillance footage. The timelines matched perfectly. Bought the oil, waited a day, dumped it the following afternoon. Case closed, right? Almost. I still didn't have proof that Ellie had done this more than once, but my engineer's gut was screaming pattern. Mrs. Petrov's koi pond didn't turn black from one act of random vandalism. If Ellie dumped once, she likely had a system. So, I went out for another walk, clipboard in hand, playing the casual, concerned neighbor. And within an hour, 4 more residents told me about bizarre water discoloration, oily smells, and unexplained film near their garden hoses or small collection barrels. One showed me a buried tank where the surface shimmered with an unmistakable rainbow slick. We took a quick field sample. Same contaminant, same telltale markers. Back home, I began mapping the affected houses. They all shared one thing: proximity to Ellie's property or one of the HOA's central maintenance sheds. That's when the new theory hit me. What if she wasn't just using oil she bought? What if she had a stash? Some kind of bulk dumping or collecting operation that gave her easy access to waste oil. So, I started watching her again. Over the next 2 days, I adjusted my outdoor camera, positioning it discreetly across from her house. It didn't take long. On Thursday afternoon, Ellie loaded the trunk of her immaculate sedan with what looked like heavy containers and drove off alone. I tailed her, maintaining a safe distance. She pulled into this dingy, forgotten self-storage facility on the far edge of town. She used a keypad to access a specific unit, backed her sedan right up, and disappeared for nearly 20 minutes. When she emerged, her trunk was empty. That was it. She was storing used oil. Why? I still wasn't sure, but I was about to find out. Friday morning came. The DEP team arrived in unmarked vehicles, dressed like municipal inspectors. Masterful low-key performance. David greeted me with a solemn nod. I briefed them: maps, footage, samples, timestamps. I handed over my entire case folder. They brought specialized equipment and began taking their own official readings from my tanks, my soil, the neighborhood drainage grates, and, most critically, the Cedar Creek tributary. Within hours, they confirmed everything. Contamination levels in the creek were so high that David just muttered, "She's going to need a miracle and a team of lobbyists." But Ellie didn't know. She was busy preparing for that weekend's neighborhood pride parade, where she intended to walk prospective buyers through the community, showing off her vision of suburban perfection. The timing couldn't have been sweeter. Just as she was setting up decorative floral arrangements near the HOA office entrance, the DEP team walked in with a warrant and started asking questions. Ellie, who hates confrontation but loves authority, immediately switched to her sickly sweet voice. "Oh, gentlemen, I wasn't expecting an inspection. Are you perhaps from the local garden club?" "The Azalea League," she purred. David Stone flashed his official badge. "Department of Environmental Protection, ma'am. We are conducting a serious contamination investigation following reports of illegal hazardous waste dumping in this community. We need immediate, unrestricted access to all HOA property, including maintenance sheds and recorded meeting notes from the past year." Her face snapped. I saw the raw fear, the pure, unadulterated shock in her eyes. This is completely outrageous. There has been no dumping. I would know. I am the president. The agents didn't waste a second. While two officers kept her talking, mostly just letting her rant herself into a corner, the rest began sweeping the storage sheds. Within 30 minutes, they found a stack of 5-gallon drums. Some were empty, others were still full, and all of them had the exact oil composition identified in my tank. Worse, one of the barrels had a faded label that read, in her signature script, "Collect and save EV." David just looked at her. She looked at him. Then she let out this pathetic, theatrical shriek. This is a frame-up. A conspiracy. Alex planted that. He's obsessed with me. No one believed her. The DEP didn't arrest her on the spot. They didn't need to. They had everything. Chain of custody, official samples, and photos. Ellie was given an official notice of investigation and informed that felony charges were being prepared. As the DEP team packed up, the neighbors had gathered, whispering and pointing. I heard someone say, "She's finally getting what she deserves." Another added, "Can we impeach her now?" Ellie stomped back to her sedan, trembling, muttering about witch hunts and government overreach. But me? I stood there, feeling absolutely serene. I wasn't smiling out of pettiness. I was smiling because justice, the real kind, was finally, irrevocably in motion. But the investigation wasn't just about the dumping. The DEP was methodical, and my gut kept nagging. Ellie wasn't the type to get her hands dirty unless she was running something bigger. It felt too practiced. I spent the weekend back at the self-storage unit, watching my camera feed. On Sunday morning, Ellie's SUV rolled in again. She parked, got out in oversized sunglasses and a hoodie, her pathetic attempt at a disguise, and opened her unit. Inside, I caught clear footage of her shuffling several large containers. Then, she picked up a clipboard, flipped through what looked like checklists, and made precise marks. That wasn't random dumping. That was logistics. That was tracking. I handed the footage to David, who went silent as he watched. "This is organized, Marcus," he said. "If she's moving product or disposing of it systematically across multiple residential zones, this escalates to potential environmental trafficking and fraud. We need to follow the money." And that's when the whole thing exploded. David and the DEP filed for access to Ellie's financials and the HOA discretionary spending records. Turns out, Ellie had been quietly laundering HOA funds through fake maintenance contracts and using that money to pay for her private, illegal oil pickups with a company called Greenway Disposal, a company David immediately recognized as being flagged for improper waste handling in 3 other states. The deeper they dug, the worse it got. Misappropriation of community funds, fraudulent bookkeeping, and illegal dumping across multiple properties. But the final, definitive nail in the coffin came from an entirely unexpected source, her ex-husband, Robert. Robert came forward after the news of the DEP raid hit the local papers. He told the agents that during their nasty divorce, Ellie had a habit of retaliating with environmental destruction. He confirmed she poured used oil all over his backyard garden as revenge for keeping the house. He even provided old notes and messages that matched the clipboard footage, showing her long-standing malice against anyone who didn't conform. That week, Ellie's house was officially searched under a full warrant. The neighborhood gathered to watch the agents pull out bins, funnels, gloves, and boxes labeled by oil type from her garage. She had built an entire, organized system for collecting and cataloging used oil. She was located 2 counties over and served with a list of charges that included felony illegal dumping, misappropriation of HOA funds, conspiracy to commit environmental violations, and endangering a protected waterway. The charges were airtight. Ellie Vance was going to trial, and I was going to make sure every single piece of evidence saw the light of day. The courthouse was packed on day 1. Ellie looked small and defeated next to her expensive lawyer, no longer the queen of the cul-de-sac. I sat on the witness bench with David and several neighbors who had agreed to testify. My evidence folder, now thicker than any textbook, contained timelines, photos, chemical reports, and the footage that was the undeniable truth. Her lawyer's defense was pathetic, claiming she was framed by environmental extremists or blaming faulty city plumbing. But when the prosecutor played the video footage of her pouring the oil directly into my tank, the camera catching her smug face and that defiant middle finger, the room went dead silent. The prosecutor was brilliant, laying out the timeline. The purchase, the dumping, the storage unit tracking, the fraudulent HOA payments, the discovery of the collection system in her garage. Every piece of evidence clicked together like the gears of a perfect clock. Then, Robert, her ex-husband, took the stand. His testimony was devastating. He described her vendetta, how she bragged about her acts, and confirmed the note on her clipboard was a target list. The prosecutor displayed the list for the jury. Right at the top, clear as day, M. Reed's barrel system. It wasn't emotional. It was a cold, calculated pattern of malice. When I took the stand, I kept it professional. I walked the jury through the science, how the oil contaminated the filtration line, how it migrated into the Cedar Creek, and the damage to the protected wetlands. I showed the chemical fingerprint match between the oil in her storage unit and the oil in my tank. No anger, no gloating, just facts. The jury returned in under an hour. Guilty on all counts. Felony environmental damage, illegal dumping, misuse of community funds. Her lawyer looked like he had been physically deflated. Ellie just sat there, blinking, as if the reality hadn't sunk in. The sentencing hearing came 2 days later. She was ordered to pay full restitution, cover all environmental cleanup fees, and was permanently banned from any HOA activity. But the sentence that mattered was 18 months of supervised probation with mandatory community service cleaning hazardous roadside waste in a bright orange vest under county supervision. She was barred from handling or storing regulated materials for life. When she walked out of court, she was no longer Ellie the enforcer. The neighborhood had collectively exhaled for the first time in years. I didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, I rebuilt my rainwater system stronger than before, installing tamper-proof hatches and smart chemical sensors. The community rallied, offering labor and parts. It became a community rebuilding effort, a testament to what we could do when freed from tyranny. A few weeks later, the HOA held a special election. I agreed to run, but only on one condition. The board had to adopt new transparency rules and permanently allow sustainable living systems like rainwater collection and solar panels. They agreed immediately. I won the presidency easily. My first act was to clear out all of Ellie's ridiculous restrictions. Rain barrels, native landscaping, solar panels. All were now encouraged. It felt like real progress. But my final act was personal. I commissioned a local artist to create a beautiful, handcrafted wooden sign, and I mounted it permanently near the entrance of my rebuilt rainwater system. It reads, "This system was nearly destroyed by ignorance and malice. It now stands as a monument to resilience, truth, and clean water. May we never forget the mess one person can make, or how much stronger we are when we clean it up." And in small, subtle lettering below the quote, a final, pointed dedication. Dedicated to Ellie Vance. Thanks for the inspiration. Poetic justice is slow, but God, when it arrives, it is sweeter than any victory. She had tried to destroy the very thing that made me independent. Instead, her malice forced the truth into the open, and in the end, her hate became the catalyst that fixed our entire neighborhood. Tell me, what do you think? Was the mandatory roadside cleanup and the public shame poetic justice for a crime driven purely by petty spite, or should she have faced jail time? Have you ever dealt with an HOA tyrant? And how did you successfully fight back? Drop your stories and your thoughts in the comments below. Like this video if you think the new sign is the ultimate mic drop, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of the Oakhaven saga. Thanks for watching.